Hello and welcome to edupediaworld.com. So friends, in today's video we are starting a new topic which is gravitation, and we are going to talk about first about what is gravity, and about gravity we have spoken in the previous videos also. Here we are going to talk more about gravity, and we are also going to talk about this gravitational force and also touch upon the Kepler's law. Right? Now, what is gravity? Now we know that whenever we throw any object up in the air, the object automatically comes down to the earth. So you see here the girl, she throws an apple upwards and that apple comes down. Or let's say she throws a ball upwards, the ball comes down on the earth. So any object which is thrown up in the sky comes back to earth is because of gravity. Because there is a force with which the earth is pulling these objects towards itself. Now just imagine if there is no gravity on the earth, then what would happen? Then these objects, when thrown up in the air, would just fly off away from the atmosphere of the earth. Now because there is gravity, so the gravity attracts everything towards itself, everything towards earth. And that is why the object falls back to earth. Now we see that the human population is all over the world. So now let's say as we are seeing this earth from this view, person over here is fine, but what happens to the person who are staying here or this side? Why don't they just fall? That is also because all of them, not just the object but the human population, the animals, everything is attracted by the earth towards itself, and that is why we all are able to live on the earth. The satellites which are orbiting around the surface of the earth, why do they maintain a particular orbit? That is because there is some kind of force of attraction between the satellite and the earth, right? This satellite and the earth, they are pulling each other with a particular force, due to which they stay at that point where they're supposed to be, right? Now you see here the moon, the earth, the other planets. Why is that all the planets are rotating around the sun in a particular orbit? That is because the sun is attracting all these satellites with a particular force, right? And that is why they follow a particular orbit. Now let's say if there is no force of attraction, then what would happen? The planets would just go anywhere to anywhere, and they will not be in a particular orbit as they are right now. Because there is a force of attraction by which sun is pulling all these planets towards itself. That is why all of them have a separate orbit. All of them have a separate rate at which they are moving, right? That is why when we see moon, now moon is also rotating around the earth. That is because there is a force by which the earth is attracting the moon, and there is a force by which the moon is also attracting the earth, right? These kinds of forces which are exerted by smaller objects like a ball or the apple or the human beings or the planetary objects like the sun, the moon and the other planets up in the space, this force is known as gravitational force, right? So there is gravitational force between every object that exists on this surface of earth or anywhere. Now we have a solar system, and we talked about how each planet is placed in the solar system and how they follow a particular orbit. Now forget about the solar system. Even if we talk about the Milky Way, so many solar systems, they combine together and then they form a Milky Way. So that Milky Way is formed, that is also because of the gravitational force, because of the force that is exerted between each of these planetary objects, and that's how they form a Milky Way. Now let's talk more about gravity and gravitational force. So now, after giving you this introduction about gravity and gravitational force, how do we define gravity? We can define gravity as the force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth or towards any other physical body having some mass, right? So it is a kind of force that a body is attracting towards itself, right? And The only condition is that the body should have some mass. The body which is trying to attract the other object should have some mass. Be it negligible, be it very, very small, but it should have some mass, right? Also, it is a force that exists among all the material objects in the universe. For any two objects or particles having non-zero mass, the force of gravity tends to attract them towards each other. So it says that it is exerted by all the objects, and every object attracts every other object, right? So if I have a pen which is just lying next to me, pen, and I'm sitting, so there is a force of attraction between me and the object which is kept next to me. So only condition what I talked about is that the mass of the object has to be non-zero. So when we say non-zero, it means it is very, very small, but it is not zero. So as I said, the gravity extends from a very, very small object like ball or an apple or any other small objects to the planetary objects, as you see here, even the Milky Way, right? And the entire universe is all because of this gravitational force. Now let's talk about the gravity in the case of a standard model. Now what is a standard model? We have the atom here and we have the electrons which are orbiting in the orbits here. Now let's say we magnified the nucleus, and what we found is that nucleus consists of the protons and the neutrons. Now look at one proton. Proton is again made up of gluons and quarks. Now how is this proton formed? Proton is formed because the gluons and the quarks are held together because of the gravitational force. They exert that force between each other. Now that's how the proton is formed. Now the protons and the neutrons, they are brought together. Again, this is because of the gravitational force that exists between the neutrons and the protons. So this forms a nucleus again. And around the nucleus, we see that we have electrons which are orbiting in different orbitals, right? So the electrons are orbiting in a particular orbit. That is again because of the gravitational force between the electrons and the nucleus, right? So now why don't we feel the gravitational force in an atom is because the mass of a proton is so small, the mass of an electron is so small that we cannot feel the gravitational pull. We can only feel the gravitational pull while we are here on Earth, or let's say we are out of the space on the moon. Then we may feel it because the mass of the Earth is huge. The mass of the sun, the moon, is more. But here in the case of an atom or of a nucleus, when we talk about protons and neutrons, the mass is, very, very negligible. It's not zero, but it is not non-zero. That is why we do not feel that there is any kind of gravitational force between them, but there exists a gravitational force between them, right? That is why I said the gravitational force extends from such microscopic level, like in the case of a standard model we just discussed, to the huge objects like the planetary objects, right? So it operates over all distances, no matter how small they are or how big or great they are. Now, this concept of gravity and gravitational force was actually brought forward by a genius scientist who was Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a brilliant scientist, and his contributions we can see even today also. He was known as the father of calculus, and calculus is something that we use in mathematics, right? He brought out this concept of gravity, and today gravity is the most studied phenomenon. Because of the phenomena of gravity that he brought out, we are able to now find out what is the distance of these huge planetary objects like the sun and the moon, what is the distance from each other, and what are the radius, how do they basically follow that particular orbit. So there are many other information that we could get through because of the phenomena of gravity that he brought out. It was Isaac Newton who introduced the law of universal gravitation, and he said that every object in this universe attracts every other object with a force which is known as the gravitational force, and this he named as law of universal gravitation, which we are going to talk about later, right? And with this he gave different dimension to physics, the physics that we are using even today in our daily lives, right? The three laws of motion, the equations of motion, all these concepts were brought by Isaac Newton. So now we are going to talk about this law of universal gravitation, under which he said that every body is surrounded by a gravitational force, and because the body is surrounded by the gravitational force, the body is attracted by every other body in the universe. So let's now talk about the law of universal gravitation. To understand this law of universal gravitation, we have to consider two masses, that is m1 and m2. So they have different mass, and let's say they are separated by a distance of r, small r. Now what the law of universal gravitation says is that the strength of the field is directly proportional to the mass of the object and inversely proportional to the square of the distance from its center, or for any point outside the object itself, right? So that means the strength of the field is basically the gravitation force we are talking about here. So the force or the field is what is denoted by F, is proportional to, forget this G, I will talk about this G later. It says it is directly proportional to mass of the object. Mass of the object is m1 and m2. So the product here, m1 and m2. And inversely proportional to square of the distance from its center. That is square of the distance, that is r square, right? Where this r is the distance between two objects, and we see here this capital G. So capital G is the gravitational constant. So force, the gravitational force is proportional to both the mass and inversely proportional to square of the distance between them, right? So that is the law of gravitation. Again, the strength of the field, what we said, is directly proportional to mass of the object, but mass of the object is, let's say this is m1 and this is m2. Each object has some kind of gravitational force or gravitational pull towards the other object. So let's say is the force by which it is pulled towards F2, and F2 is the force by which M2 is getting pulled towards M1. So both the forces will be equal. M1 is equal to M2 is equal to G into M1 into M2 by R square, because R is the distance between them. So this will be the gravitational pull, gravitational force between these two objects, right? So that is the law of universal gravitation that the Isaac Newton talked about. Now we will apply this law of universal gravitation onto the huge objects like the Earth and the Moon. So let's see what happens. Now Earth will also try to pull Moon with some gravitational force. Now what do you think? Whose gravitational force will be larger? Whose gravitational force will be more than the other? Yes, by looking at both the objects, I can say that the gravitational pull of Earth will be much more than the gravitational pull of the Moon, because Moon is very, very small in size and Earth is big in size. So I have denoted this force by which the Moon pulls is small f, and the force by which Earth is trying to pull the Moon is capital F, right? Now, so what can we say is that gravitational field of Earth is stronger than that of the Moon is because the mass of the Earth is huge, but the mass of the Moon is very small as compared to the Earth. So that's why this force will be larger. Similarly, if we take the case of Sun and the Earth, the Sun will try to pull the Earth with some force of gravity. Similarly, the Earth will also try to pull Sun with some force of gravity. Now, which force do you think again is more? Yes, the force with which the sun is trying to pull the earth will be much more than as compared to the earth, because again the size of the sun is more than as compared to the size of the earth. The mass of the sun is more as compared to the mass of the earth, and that's why the gravitational field of sun is much more stronger than as compared to the earth. So likewise we can compare all the objects. Now, so what have you understood by these two examples that we have just discussed is that the object which has more mass will have stronger force of attraction by which it can attract the other objects, right? And the object which has lesser mass will have lesser gravitational force or weaker gravitational force as compared to the other object. Now this we talked about in terms of the mass. Now let's see what happens if we talk about the objects in terms of their height. Now let's say that the person is walking on the surface of the earth. The distance of this person from the center of the earth is small r, and we have a satellite who's at a distance of h from the center of the earth. And well, let's say we take mass of the person to be m1 and mass of the satellite to be m2. Now first we will determine what is the force by which the earth is trying to pull the person who's walking on the surface. So this force will be F between earth and mass is equal to capital G, which is the gravitational constant, capital M, which is the mass of the earth, small m1, which is the mass of the person who's walking, divided by r square, because r is the distance of the person from the center of the earth. This becomes the force with which the earth will try to pull the person. Next we will calculate the force with which the earth is trying to pull the satellite, which is at a height of h from the earth, will be F earth between satellite is equal to capital G, capital M, small m2, because small m2 is the mass of the satellite, divided by h square. Now which force do you think becomes small? Now here h square is very large as compared to r. H becomes very large. This entire quantity, that is F, the force with which the earth is trying to pull the satellite, becomes very small. So what do we find? We find that the force with which the earth is trying to pull the person is much larger as compared to the force with which the earth is trying to pull the satellite, and this is mainly because of the distance. So what have we learned here? We now know that the more the distance between the two objects, the lesser will be the gravitational force. Now here the distance between the person and the earth is the radius of the earth. That's why he will be pulled with a stronger force as compared to the force with which the satellite will be pulled towards earth. So the height or the distance between the two objects is a factor when we decide upon the gravitational force. Now, and because of this factor, you will see that the gravitational force will be different for different object. It will be more for an object which is closer to earth. It will be less for an object which is away from the surface of the earth. What does this picture tells you? This shows that the gravitational field extends indefinitely in all the directions. You see a person here, a girl here, and she's trying to throw the ball. The ball is going to fall back onto the surface of the earth. You see a person here, he's trying to throw something, it falls back to the surface of the earth. Again another person, he's trying to throw something up, it's going to come down to the earth. So the gravitational force is in every direction. Just to explain to you that the gravitational force exists in all the direction and it exists around every object. We take the example of the earth and we take any three objects, and these three objects are going to come down to the surface of the earth, right? Because all these objects are actually, they come under the law of universal gravitation. They also comply to the law of universal gravitation, which is F is equal to gm into m divided by r square. Now till now we have been talking about the force of gravitation between two objects, and we said capital G is the gravitational constant. Now the value of this capital G is calculated to be 6 into 674 into 10 power minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square, right? So how do we calculate this gravitational constant? There are various experiments which were conducted, and the gravitational force between the two objects, if it is known, then by substituting all the other values like m1 and the other mass m2 and the distance between the object, we can calculate G. And this has been determined, verified by many other experiments. The value of capital G is 6 into 674 into 10 power minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square, right? That is the gravitation constant. So now that we have learnt about the law, what is the importance of law? The universal law of gravitation successfully explained several phenomena which were believed to be unconnected. Firstly, the force that binds us to the earth, the motion of the moon around the earth, it's again because of the gravitational pull. The motion of the planets around the sun, that is again because of the gravitational force. And the tides due to the moon and the sun. This you must have heard that on a full moon day the tides are generally very high. That is again because of the gravitational pull between the moon and the sun that the tides become, very high. Now here we are going to talk about Kepler's law. Who was Kepler? In the early 1600s, Kepler was a scientist who proposed the three laws of planetary motion, and with three statements that describes the motion of the planet in a sun-centered solar system. The Kepler's law were also based on the force of gravitation, and it shows us that the law of gravitation actually were the correct law because they all apply to these planetary objects also. So the first law is the law of the ellipse, and the first law says that the path of the planet about the sun is elliptical in shape, with the center of the sun being located at one focus. That is, if the sun is here in the center, then you take any planet, it will have an elliptical orbit. Sun being at the center, the orbit that is formed by any planet will be elliptical in orbit, right? That is the first law of ellipse. The second law is the law of equal areas. And this law actually describes that the speed at which any given planet will move while orbiting the sun is constantly changing. It says that the speed is not the same, but speed is changing, right? A planet moves faster when it is closer to the sun, and it will move very slow when it is very far from the sun. Now, yet, if an imaginary line were drawn from the center of the planet to the center of the sun, like here we have drawn the planet, here we have drawn the line from the center of the sun to the planet here. So this area, you see here, this area when the planet is very far, this area will be equal to the area when the planet will be very close to the sun, and the planet will be moving very faster. So both the areas swept by the planet will be equal. It is equal areas in equal time. Here, because why is the area equal? Because here the planet is moving very fast, whereas here the planet is moving very slow. So it talks about the speed of the planet. Kepler says that the speed of the planet is not same, but it is constantly changing. It can be seen from the diagram that the areas formed when the earth is closest to the sun can be approximated as a wide but short angle here. This is it's a very wide, but it's a very small, it can be taken as an angle, right? Whereas the area which is formed when the earth is far from the sun, it can be approximated to a very, very narrow but a big triangle, right? So that is the law of equal areas. Now the third law sometimes is referred to as the law of harmonics, and it compares the orbital period and the radius of the orbit of the planet to that of the other planets. Now it is unlike Kepler's first and the second law that describes the characteristics of the motion of a single planet. This actually is more of a comparison law. It compares the orbital period and the radius of the orbit of one planet with that of the other planets. So in the case of the law of harmonics, what is the comparison? The comparison is that the ratio of the squares of the period of any two planets will be equal to the ratio of the cubes of their average distances from the sun, right? Now, after studying the Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion, let's now talk about what Newton has to say about planetary motion. So for this, what we do is we consider sun, and let's say the sun, the mass of the sun is capital M, sun, and then we have a planet which is revolving around the sun whose mass is M, capital M, planet. So we have a sun and a planet, right? We know that there is a gravitational force by which the sun is trying to attract the planet. Now the net centripetal force that is acting upon this orbiting planet is given by the relationship which is F net, which is a net force, and this net force is nothing but the centripetal force, is equal to mv square by r, because the formula for centripetal force is mv square by r. But here we write what is m? M is the mass of the planet. So this is the centripetal force. This is the force by which the planet will be attracted towards the sun. Centripetal force will act on the object which is rotating around any circular orbit, and we take this as a circular orbit. That's why we are writing the centripetal force, right? Centripetal force will always act inwards, right, of any circular track. Now we also know that we talked about the gravitational force which is acting between the two surfaces. The gravitational force will be G, which is a gravitational constant. Mass, both the masses, mass of the planet and mass of the sun, divided by r square, because r square is the distance between the sun and the planet, right? So now these two forces should be equal, right? Because force is a force between these two planetary objects, the sun and the planet. So ideally speaking, these two forces should be equal. So what we do is that we equate these two forces. Now these two forces should be equal because the net centripetal force is the result of the gravitational force that attracts the planet towards the sun. That is nothing but the gravitational force or the centripetal. So these two forces should be equated together. So what we do is that we have F net and F gravitation. So because they both are equal, we equate both of them. And when we solve this equation, one r and this r on the right hand side will get cancelled. M planet will also get cancelled. Now we know that the velocity of any object which is in a circular orbit is approximately v is equal to 2 pi r by t. We also substitute this v in the above equation. Here v square will become 4 pi square into r square, right? So likewise, when we substitute the value of v in this equation and we try to solve this equation, we will get t square by r square is equal to m planet into 4 into pi r square divided by g into m planet into m sun. So finally m planet will get cancelled out because it is same. So t square by r square is equal to 4 pi r square divided by g into m sun. So why is that so? Because see, here you see, because it doesn't depend upon the mass of the planet or the time period of the planet. It only depends upon mass of the sun. Rest all figures like gravitation force is a constant, pi square has a constant value. Only it depends on mass of the sun, which will remain constant in the case of the planets. Right? So whether we take the case of Mars, or we take the case of the Venus, or we take the case of Pluto, or we take the case of Uranus, any planet, T square by R cube will remain the same, because it doesn't depend upon the planet. It only depends upon the mass of the sun. That's why in the third law of Kepler, which is the law of harmonics, this quantity becomes the constant. Now here the second law of motion is also used. Now we have F is equal to G into M earth into M object divided by R square. Let's say we take a particular object which is on the surface of the earth, and the mass of the object is small m, whereas the mass of the earth is capital M. So what will be the gravitation force? It will be G into capital M into small m divided by R square. So what we write, in short, we'll write M is equal to G M by R square. Also we know from the second law of motion, F is equal to M into G, right? Because here we don't write A because it is not a linear, but it is a vertical. In the vertical direction it is the acceleration, so we write here G instead of A, so M into G. So these two forces should be equal, so we equate them and we get small g is equal to Gm by R square. Now if we substitute all the values, the value of gravitation is 6.7 into 10 power 11 into what is the mass of the earth, 6 into 10 power 24, divided by R is 6.4 into 10 power 6 the whole square. So this is the radius of the earth. So if we substitute the value, we will be getting G is equal to 9.8 meter per second square. This is nothing but it is the acceleration due to gravity. So that's how we can determine acceleration due to gravity and its value by using this formula, that is by using the gravitation formula. So that's how we got the value of G. Now if we keep, other than this object, if we keep any other object on the surface of the earth and try to calculate G, the value will be 9.8 meters per second square only. So the value of G is constant. You know, some places the value of the constant comes out to be 10 meters per second square, but most of the places it is 9.8 meters per second square. So which means that if this object falls under the force of gravity, then the acceleration due to gravity will be 9.8 meters per second square, right? So I hope in this video you must have understood what is gravity, what is gravitational force, and how is this gravitational force acting between any two objects irrespective of their size, right? We also talked about Kepler's law. So I hope you must have understood the concept of gravity and gravitation. So thank you for watching Edupedia World videos.